Hello, Internet! So, I think this is the part where I'm supposed to have a dramatic opening, perhaps the 2001 theme song playing in the background as the number 1 million slowly fades into view, but obviously, that's not happening. Don't get me wrong, I'm lucky that so many people want to watch my videos, it's just that 1 million subscribers is a number too large to be comprehended with a monkey-derived brain. To try and have it feel more real, I've taken some YouTube data and made a spreadsheet. You can select your country and enter the population of the city where you live, and it will spit out the statistically approximate number of people in that city who are subscribed to this channel. Doing that for London shows there are about 9,000 people in the city who are subscribers. Now, 9,000 is obviously a smaller number than 1 million, but it's a number with constraints and is small enough to be partially understood while still large enough to be very intimidating. If you're interested, you can click here to play around with the spreadsheet. Now, as promised, on to the Q&A. What do you like most about being a YouTuber? The best thing about this strange new world is the people I've met, which is quite the statement for a social recluse to make. All these guys are amazing to talk with, and I feel very lucky that I get the occasional chance to do so. What's the biggest change of opinion you've had? That's a little too personal to share with, say, 1 million people, but I do want to talk about the importance of being able to change your mind in general. The trick is to keep your identity separate from your opinions. They are objects in a box you carry with you and should be easily replaceable if it turns out they're no good. If you think that the opinions in the box are who you are, then you'll cling to them despite any evidence to the contrary. Bottom line, if you want to always be right, you need to always be prepared to change your mind. Were you trying to create a unique aesthetic by using stick figures? No, it's just that I can't draw. After moving to London, how long did it take until you stopped saying math and started saying maths? I haven't. I'm sticking with math. Americans in the UK often end up with an unfortunate accent I call pseudo-British. I try very hard to avoid this, but when you've spent the majority of your talking time with British people over a decade, it's impossible to completely fight the creeping pseudo-British accent, no matter how abhorrent you think it makes you sound. Did your students know about your YouTube channel? I would never talk about it, but I know some of them knew. However, it's impossible to express how little they cared. My classes were not like hour-long CGP Grey videos. Would you like to see the interrobang more widely adopted? Who wouldn't? Why don't you have an upload schedule? Right, the big question, usually phrased in the YouTube comment section as, why you no make more vids? So on average, over the past couple years, I've posted a Grey Explains video about every 5 weeks, which means if I could switch to a weekly schedule, my income would quintuple. Trust me, I would if I could. I've talked before about how long it takes to make these videos, but one of the other problems I haven't mentioned is the failure rate of projects. For every video you see, there's at least 3 or 4 that didn't make it. Most of the time, that's just a lost afternoon working on an idea before realizing it's a dud, but sometimes it's weeks before a fatal flaw reveals itself. Sometimes I'll discover too late that a central fact of the video isn't correct, or sometimes the whole script is just unfixably boring. Either way, the decision to kill a video that isn't working is depressing and frustrating because of the sunk cost of all those hours. The videos you see are mostly pretty good precisely because I try my best to kill the ones that weren't. That's why there isn't a schedule, and there never can be. What's the biggest video you killed? The most time I ever lost was on a very important video to convince the world why Settlers of Catan is the greatest board game ever made. I had a couple thousand words as a starting point, harassed some people for footage of a now famous game that took place at YouTube EDU, got a bunch of random videos from my ever-helpful Twitter followers, and had an outline for a how-to-play Settlers of Catan tutorial for my second channel. But the script kept growing and began to look more like a documentary film on board game design than a YouTube video, which might, depending on who you are, sound really interesting, but it had the boring problem I mentioned before. My last-ditch effort to save a project like this is to get rid of everything, work on something else for a little while, and then write a brand new script by hand, which I did. But that script still wasn't good, and weeks after starting the project, I had to shelve it. But I'm still talking about it because it's an idea that I just can't let go and might come back to someday. Why don't you hire people to help you? That's a big topic that deserves its own video, but for now, let me just say the kind of work produced by individuals is very different than the kind of work produced by groups. One isn't intrinsically better than the other, but I think the kinds of videos I've made have all benefited from being a one-man project from start to finish. Your opinion on koalas? They sleep 20 hours a day. Never going to be a koala-based civilization with that kind of work ethic. If you could transfer your brain into a robotic body, would you? Obviously, yes. You can add 3 amendments to the US Constitution. What do they do? Oh, so many tempting changes to make. Off the top of my head, I'd say first, abolish private funding of all elections and instead make them run from a limited pool of tax money. Second, abolish the Senate and replace it with some kind of proportional body. And third, overturn the Interstate Commerce Clause, which basically gives the federal government a little too much power over the affairs of the states. Of course, if it was actually my responsibility to change three things, I'd consult with some experts rather than just idly mull it over for a couple days. What advice would you give for a successful life? Build a self-evaluation loop into your life. If you don't periodically review your actions and how they've turned out and your decision-making process, then there's no hope for your life to improve other than just by random chance. I do very small weekly reviews and bigger quarterly and yearly reviews of how my life is going and how I might want it to be different in both the biggest and smallest ways and what actions I need to take to try and achieve that. That's the best high-level advice I have. For more technical advice, I recommend two books, one that changed my life, Getting Things Done by David Allen, and another that might change yours, So Good They Can't Ignore You by Cal Newport. You can click these books to read my reviews of them. Have you made a video you didn't like how it came out? With the possible exception of the 2012 in Holland videos, I'm unhappy with all of them. I don't watch my videos after upload if I can possibly avoid it. To me, each is a graveyard of the could have been. Favorite non-educational YouTube channels? First, Glove and Boots, who I'm surprised haven't yet gotten all the subscribers, and second, I'm a huge fan of Yahtzee, the Roger Ebert of video game reviews. What was your first memory of the internet? Mine is playing Flash games. Mine is BBS's. Now get off my lawn and go watch this documentary, you whippersnapper. Who are your heroes? Mostly Darkseer and Necrolite. What do you find hardest when making a video? Writing the script is the hardest, and it's unfortunately the bottleneck for the whole process. The most uncomfortable part is editing the audio. Just like everyone else, there's a voice in my head that I like and a voice on the tape that I don't. Have any of your answers from the previous Q&A changed? You're probably referring to these, and no. How long would you survive a zombie apocalypse? I wouldn't. If a Walking Dead-style zombie apocalypse arises, the correct course of action is clearly suicide. What do you listen to while making videos? My most reliable writing music is Girl Talks All Day, which I would link to on YouTube, but it's copyright infringement-tastic. You can get it from his website, and if you like remixes, you should give it a listen. However, I often get some random terrible song in my head while writing and end up buying it and putting it on repeat for hours. For this script, my iTunes reveals I listened to a single song 127 times, and while that might be torture in some jurisdictions, the repetitiveness really zones me into writing. Animating, however, is incredibly tedious, so I listen to a ton of audiobooks and podcasts to keep my sanity. What's the most interesting could have been of history? Historical could have beens mostly strike me as a missing the point thought exercise. The real driver of history is neither great men nor the actions of the masses, but the ceaseless march of science and technology, which is mostly indifferent to the imaginary lines drawn by packs of monkeys. Knowing my perspective, you'll see why, if I had to pick one, it would be this primitive Greek steam engine invented 2,000 years ago. There are reasons why it wasn't developed further, but if some rich Greek had gotten obsessed with the technology, perhaps we would have had an industrial revolution 2 millennia earlier, and we'd now be a transgalactic post-singularity civilization, with robot bodies. What's the most British thing you've encountered that you can't get your head around? The idea that the best way to cool down on a hot summer day while confined to a non-air-conditioned office is to drink hot tea. Madness. Absolute madness. Should we create a universal language? We already have, it's just not very universal. Well, Internet, it's been fun, and I'm sorry if your question didn't make it into this video. There were loads I had to cut. But now that we're in this realm of numbers so big they don't make sense, perhaps I'll turn Q&As into an occasional random thing rather than a waiting for an arbitrary base 10 rollover thing. Thank you again to everyone for your continued support, and thank you for subscribing and watching. These last 2 years have been quite a ride.